Welcome back to the channel. We got more commentary for you. Candace Owens recently put out a social media post saying that people are getting paid to criticize her, and my only response to that disgusting allegation is simple. Why am I not getting paid? Like, why can't I be getting paid $1,500 to criticize Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens? I'll take that money. Here, come on, right here. Email on my channel. Give me money to criticize them. Come on. Um, with that said, this is going to be an interesting video. I'm not going to come into it just willing to disagree with Candace because, even though I think the Trump administration is evil, there are things that I do think conservative wise I 100% agree with. Conservative, not MAGA, that I agree with. And when it comes down to kind of like the social cultural stuff, I definitely lean more right than left. So in this video, I might agree with Candace more often. We will see. One conservative, Candace Owens versus 20 feminists. Let's see if Candace can't end up a meme like Jordan Peterson did.
They just want flexible.
I will not be reacting to this full video because I'm standing up and I'm not standing up for 2 hours. And also, you can watch the full video on the Jubilee YouTube channel, right?
Working hours and flexible working conditions like you have. And I think we should all advocate for that. It's not one or the public.
Candace Owens. I am a podcaster, a mother, a wife, and also the author of the upcoming book, Make Him a Sandwich. And today I am surrounded by 20.
Wait. wait. You're writing a book called Make Him a Sandwich? You know what doesn't make sense to me though? Like all these conservative women like Candace Owens and like Pearl, all that stuff. I think they're pretty women. I don't like to downplay women. I think that's pretty weird and disgusting, man. I'll take them both out for a coffee, you know what I'm saying? But like it doesn't make sense when you say things like that and then at the same time you have a full functioning career where you're making a lot of money. And at the very least for Candace's sake, like she's married with a kid, but you're not a stay-at-home mom, obviously. You do content and podcasting for a living. And then for Pearl, she's not even married. So it's like you're not really practicing what you preach. I don't think necessarily that is bad, but the way you kind of have this kind of visceral negative perception of these women who do not follow the guidelines that you're outlining for people, like making your husband a sandwich, and then you're not doing it, it just doesn't make sense to me. But with that said, let's dive into
feminists. My first claim is that the sexual revolution has devalued women and made them infinitely less happy.
The sexual revolution. I guess it really depends on what you mean by sexual revolution. I do think this overly sexual nature of, at the very least, American society is more troubling than it is good. I do think it is problematic because, very simple, I'll put this out very clearly. I do truly believe the most important aspects of being a human is one of the most important, not the most, one of the most important aspects is having a family. I genuinely do. So it doesn't seem like we are doing that a lot of divorce rates, a lot of single parents. And is that attributed to the sexual revolution? Hard to say, but we'll see how this conversation flows.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Samaya.
Samaya, nice to meet you. I'm Candace.
Nice to meet you too. So my question for you is, statistics show that 60% of women who are murdered by their intimate partner.
UN statistics show that 60% of murdered women were killed by their intimate partner or a family member. Okay, that is a statistic. What's the correlation from the statistic? I'm curious.
Is murdered by someone that they are in close relations with. That's according to the UN from 2023.
Yeah.
So how is it that, women are so valued, quote unquote, in the home, and yet that's the place where they're at the most danger?
Okay, so I'm not sure what that has to do with the sexual revolution.
Right, the sexual revolution.
first claim.
The sexual revolution gave.
I'm happy to answer it. I'm just saying that,
I'm always fair when it comes to these conversations. Similar to the 9 to 5 conversation where face streamers made average workers kind of look dumb for money, which I don't respect at all. There has to be a realization that most people don't think about this critically, or at the very least don't think about it properly, and don't really have critical conversations like this in a very substantive manner. So she seems like she's young, and she looked up the statistic, or someone told it to her. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out.
if you brought in that statistic, you
Sure.
are more likely in general just to be murdered by somebody you know. So of course,
But men are much less likely to be murdered by, their
that's
intimate
not
partners.
true.
Yes,
By
it is.
So I just don't. Men are stronger than women. I just don't get the correlation here. What is the conversation we're having at the moment?
Yeah, I'm sure, because men are less likely to be murdered by women. Full stop.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that statistic makes sense to me. I'm still not sure how this correlates to whether or not
The sexual revolution increased women's ability to leave the house, women's ability to control their own reproductive capabilities, women's ability to, control their own capacity within the workforce in regards to their own sexual capacity. So it is the very fact that the sexual revolution happened that.
It seems like she's arguing not necessarily about the sexual revolution in an isolated manner. She's more so arguing do I want to say the broad curie of the revolution of women individuality, which, I mean, fair. It also seems like she's kind of arguing that women being able to separate themselves more from men allowed them to be more safe, but at the same time you're using a statistic from current day. It's just not a strong argument. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I get what she's saying, but no, I'm giving her a little too much leeway. This is just not a good argument.
Made our access to the workplace much more, or just the public sphere in general, much more easy. So without the sexual revolution, women would be much more confined to the place where they're at the most danger. Isn't that true?
Oh, so she's arguing the existence of the causal, or the existence of the revolution in general was necessary. I think Candace is more focusing on the results of the revolution down the line. I don't know. Well, I'll let Candace.
So you think that, just so I'm trying to understand your argument here, you think that if we didn't have the sexual revolution, less women or more women would be murdered? Are you saying that more
women would be murdered for sure?
Okay. I disagree with that. I still don't think it has anything to do with the claim that women are infinitely less happy because of the sexual revolution, which has devalued
I think
women.
you'd probably be less happy if you're being murdered.
Oh.
Anyone disagree?
Okay, yeah, I don't. Okay. Okay. There is definitely a correlation between personal relationships and domestic violence. And just to be clear, if we're talking about just a monogamous relationships, the most violent relationships that are on the books are between lesbian partners. Yes, when people are intimate,
that's
shows 61% of bisexual women, 44% of lesbian women reported intimate partner violence compared to 35%. Well, there you go.
Not a
that is actually true.
No, the statistic you're talking about is people who have faced domestic violence. Lesbians, yes, are more likely to have faced domestic violence, but that's because they typically came from relationships with men in which they were mistreated.
Lesbian relationships are the most violent relationships that we have on the books.
But we can move on.
They can fact check that claim. The point being is that it's not exactly a stunning statistic to say that when people are in relationships, period, whether those relationships are homosexual, whether they're married,
you're saying
It's obvious she thinks she probably falls in the camp that all men are bad. That's unfortunate. She's young. It's a very surface level idea. It's whatever.
No,
That the sexual
let
revolution.
me finish. I've let you try to explain how this is
Go ahead,
correlated to
go.
happiness, and I don't think it does. I actually think you're having a different debate right now. But yes, absolutely, it makes perfect sense that you are more likely in general when you are in a relationship, because people are driven by anger by people that they know, whether or not we're talking about boyfriend and girlfriend, girlfriend and girlfriend, a husband and a wife, a husband and a husband, or a wife and a wife. Yes, of course, the instances of domestic violence are going to take place when you're inside of a home. But the sexual revolution, encouraging women to give up.
I like her. Oh well, I'm not gonna rewind. Y'all saw it. I like her. She did a very good job in debating that freaking bot Andrew Wilson. So shout out her. I fuck with her.
Their goods for free, which is what I'm speaking about, and encouraging men not to marry these women or to have long-term relationships. What I am saying is a direct contributor to their unhappiness, because women are giving up their goods for free and women are now entering the workplace, and that does not actually make them happy.
Okay, pause. Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Damn, not even try to shake it. I kind of respect it though. If I don't respect you, I'm not shaking your hand. But like at the same time, you chose to go up there. It's whatever. It's not a big deal.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you? I'm Candace.
Nice to meet you. Julian. My pronouns are they, them. It's very interesting to think of it when we just think about the gender binary. It's
Candace is like, oh, give you pronouns. Oh man.
How do we place value on human beings in general? And so when we think about
wait,
how do we place value? Very interesting to think of it when we just think about the gender binary. It's how do we place value on human beings in general? And so when we think about placing value, that comes from a place of power, right? So I think let's select like the Victorian era. You have this dominant group of people coming from white supremacy, deciding who gets to have a proper status in the world, and so that is already like taking human beings and devaluing them. And so what the sexual revolution did was to help people seek out empowerment, which increased value, no matter the gender. So when it comes to sexual revolution, let's look at one contribution is sex education. I'm actually an educator.
Oh, people are going to shit on her because she's an educator who has they, them pronouns. Oh no, the Mac targets are going to be so mean in that comment section. I already know they're going to be so mean to her. So there is some credence to what she's saying. Now, does it necessarily correlate to the conversation Candace Owens is having? I don't know. But, I mean, there's a lot of different revolutions out there that increase the value of someone's humanity. One of the biggest problems with different powerful societies in the day is one of the most powerful strategies they can implement to get their people in line is dehumanizing or demonizing one side and pointing the anger, the frustration, and the violence towards a very specific area. Is one of the easiest and most effective ways to hurt human beings, right? And one of those things that the sexual revolution, you can argue, is that it like she said, it humanized women and I guess men too, women and men, to make it seem like they are more than sexual objects. So I think there's some truth there. There's some credence to different revolutions in human history that rejuvenated the humanization of the group that is being ostracized or that is being demonized or is being dehumanized. So that I think that's a fair thing to say. I still don't think we're not really on topic of what Candace is arguing, but Sure.
I teach sociology and LGBTQ studies, and I have absolutely seen the positive outcome with the sexual revolution and sex education, and seeing people empower themselves. And with that comes safety when it comes to decreasing STIs, abuse, sexual assault. Again, people get to empower themselves of all genders. And I know earlier you mentioned about violence amongst lesbians and sapphic community, which I do identify within. All genders can be subjected to violence.
That was the point I was making. So I wasn't sure of how her claim was relating to what we were talking about, whether or not it makes people happy or unhappy. Relationships are obviously a ground where there can be violence.
I guess I could just wrap it up by saying, like, if we all have access to like sex education through the incredible work of feminists, through the sexual.
There is a lot of value to what Julian is saying. And I might have been saying her, I should have been saying them. So I do apologize there. Although I'm not a big pronoun person, I don't really care about that stuff. I'll be respectful. If you want to be called that way, I will respect you wanting to be called that way. With that said, sex education is a very interesting, very nuanced conversation, but a very valuable one. I don't think that's what Candace is arguing, though. I think that's where I'm getting at. I don't think Candace is arguing we should get rid of sex education and that the sexual revolution shouldn't have happened. I think we're kind of off the script a little bit.
Revolution, we are able to gain access to information and gain skills to create an equitable society, egalitarian within our relationships, whether it be platonic or romantic. I'm so grateful for those feminists who have fought for us, so we can gain those spaces and create a healthy
Candace
society.
is arguing that.
Okay,
We'll
are
see.
you a believer in the government doing everything that it can to make people happy?
So when it comes, as someone that teaches in the public sector, I understand the concern when it comes to
the government should do whatever it can to make people happy. I agree to that. I am one of those people that do agree to that. I don't need to explain any further. I just do.
What is a teacher, what kind of information they're providing to the students. I do believe.
To an extent, of course, to an extent. And I would replace the word happy versus happy with gives them the opportunity to live a joyful life. And keyword opportunity, keyword joyful life.
That we, as a teacher, I should be able to give that sort of information. Again, I teach college students. One of my claims is I believe that we should mandate sex education amongst college students. So yes, I do want the state, I would like the government to.
Sex education mandated for college students. There might be something there. I'm not upset. I'm not upset at that. There might be something there. There might be something valuable there. Okay.
Give us those resources so we can implement that curriculum.
Okay. You consider yourself a feminist, I'm assuming?
Queer feminist. There's variations, right?
What is a queer feminist as opposed to a feminist, just so I understand?
Well, so I heavily believe in queer theory. So, the gender binary that we understand, it comes from colonization. So someone who is mixed race, family from Mexico, we have the Mushes in Mexico, which is an indigenous tribe. They believed in gender fluidity. And then you have European colonizers coming who dismantle that. And now everything that we understand when it comes to gender is a Western lens. So for
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. But I'm not here to battle that.
You don't even think women exist, I'm guessing.
I think everyone should be empowered to figure out their identity and explore the language that best describes themselves. So
I'm gonna let it go.
freedom. America, right? America, freedom. And I want to believe in that when it comes to identity. Right. Everyone should have the freedom to decide how they want to identify, as long as they're not causing harm. But that's where we get into the debate, what is harm?
So just, again, to be clear, to go back to this claim, we are debating female happiness. You are saying you do not identify as a female.
I identify with all gender expressions. So from masculinity to femininity. So
I'm just saying... Are you just saying that as a part of queer theory, you're debating whether or not women are happier after the sexual revolution? I'm just trying to understand, because it seems like you're debating queer theory as opposed to female.
I believe all genders benefit from the sexual revolution.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please return.
I guarantee MAGA is disgusting inside that comment section. Oh, I mean, they got their shit off, I guess.
Your seat.
No.
Hello,
I'm Zena.
Zena. Very much like
Shout out Xena, but come on. Main character energy. We want her. I think she will actually engage in the conversation Candace is having. We want her. And it's interesting. We got one dude, two dudes. I guarantee, I'll be surprised if any of these dudes step up. How
Hello,
dare you sit
Zena.
there in front of
very
a
much
woman?
like your name.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Can we start with the beginning? Do you identify as a female?
I identify as a woman, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I do want to like get back to your premise. You're saying that women have been devalued, right, by the sexual revolution. This like kind of presumes two things. One, that there has been a loss of worth, right, for women. So you're saying
Okay,
that
here we
women
go.
have, as human beings, lost worth. Women who prior to their sexual revolution were worth more than women today.
I would say that yes, women have devalued themselves by becoming overtly
According to
sexual. That's my claim. So I mean,
Yeah.
also according to just and let's not remove this from the other part of the claim, which that it has made women infinitely less happy.
Right.
So she's correct about there being two things. Okay, there devalued women. Devalued women. Well, my presumption is that Candace's claim is that women, for the most part, were seen as mothers to a husband's kids, and that generally nowadays she is going to assume, speaking for Candace, that women are seen more as like sexual objects that are there for gratification. Okay. And because they're not seen more as mothers, but instead seen more as sexual objects for gratification, they are less happy because of it, because they have no purpose. And I'm also going to assume Candace is going to say women's purpose is to be a mother. Some stuff I agree with, some stuff I do not agree with. Like there's like I'm 50-50 with that. If that's what her claim, I'm assuming that's what her claim is. I'm not gonna lie. But if that's what her claim is, I think there's a 50-50 there. But I also think that means the same for men too. I think it applies to both sexes nowadays.
So are you saying, but you're saying that according to you, women have been devalued?
Not according to me. According to the time in which people are getting married, how difficult it is for people to find a partner that's willing to commit to them. And I think that's in large part due to the fact that women are offering sex for free, because it was a major component of the sexual revolution was this idea.
So a woman's worth is tied to her sexuality.
It's not tied to, well, absolutely. If you're going to be having multiple partners, you are going to be devaluing yourself.
You're worth less as a human being.
Not as a human being, just, in terms of trying to have a partnership and a productive relationship. Certainly men are not going to be clamoring to have a relationship with somebody when the market is throwing them.
A man's response to your actions is what defines your worth, right?
Yeah, well, I would say that I would argue that what makes women actually happy is family. So if you're interrupting, so just to connect the dots for you, when women are having sex with multiple partners, it devalues them for men, right?
For men. So
yes. So
men define a woman's worth.
Well, I would say both.
She's asking good questions. I'm not going to answer.
For them kind of define one another's worth.
Because
I think the ultimate goal for people to be happy is actually family.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying in all cases, a woman is going to be more fulfilled in regards to family.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And this is going to work in all cases. So you're saying there's no individual case in which a woman can feel, fulfilled without being tied to other people in the case of family.
I think she's doing a good job. I'm glad she kind of had that qualifying statement at the end, because when you say something like her value is dictated by other people, in this case because of family, if she removed that, then it makes it sound like you're saying that family is just other people. but I'll let it continue.
There could be an
Let me shut up.
exceptional case for everything. I
me
think
let the
there
women
are
talk.
exceptional cases, but I think that if we all start trying to be the exception as opposed to recognizing the rule, which is that people in life are more
There's conflicting research on this topic. Pew Research found that a higher percentage of adults want a career or close friends to be fulfilled compared to kids or marriage, while the Institute of Family Studies found married men and women are happier than their unmarried counterparts, largely because they have a family support system. See, so this is all right. When you're breaking down this statement, and I haven't looked up any specific data, but I can extrapolate a lot from this statement. Follow me here. I'm not going to try to sound smart. I'm trying to make this understandable from my interpretation at the very least. Follow me. So, this sentence says two very important and very key things. Pew Research found that a higher percentage of adults want a career compared to kids or marriage. So that is a study, or that is a question given to a person based off their their potentiality of what happiness would be or how they would acquire happiness. So it's based off a preconceived notion, or it's based off the idea of a lifestyle that they have not yet achieved. So basically what I mean is this is what they think will make them happy, not what will make them happy. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. I ramble a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense. The second part of the sentence is more cutthroat. It says the Institute of Family Studies found married men and women are happier. So this is a complete statement where it's already indicating the conclusion of the question itself. Are you more happy if you're married? The other one is asking, will you? This one's saying you are, and compared to the people who are not, you're more happy. So these are not contradicting studies. Based off this sentence alone, these two things do not contradict each other. And I do think there is a lot of people who assume what will make them happy a lot of the times because of how they either perceive the world or how they consume certain types of information that seems to be happiness, right? We hear it all the time. Money doesn't make happiness, or money doesn't buy you happiness, right? And we see kids looking on TV, it's like, I want to be an NBA player. I want to have millions of dollars. I want to have 5 Ferraris. And they get this stuff and they're like, oh, I'm not happy. So hopefully that makes sense. I hopefully that makes sense. I know people say sometimes like
when they achieve
they don't understand what I'm
units,
saying in the comments,
and when they
so I'm trying to
have
make it
children, women in particular, especially aspiring to children, then you are going to end up with a bunch of people who are unhappy because your job cannot replace the feeling of having a family.
So what you're saying is we need to look at every individual case and see what is going to fulfill you, or what is going to, I guess, essentially predict your happiness more. Because if we look at, for example, the Nordic countries, right? These are countries, I'm talking about like Sweden, Denmark, right? These countries tend to be like, I think in the past 14 years, they've been ranked as the highest in happiness.
I would be curious to actually go to these countries and see why they're happy. I can assume a lot. Like, I have a very good understanding on human behavior to determine why people are not so happy right now. I've said this multiple times on my podcast on my analysis on why people think they're not happy, or why people feel like they're not happy. I feel like those same indicators, if I go to these countries, do not apply. But I can't confirm that unless like I go there and really interact with the culture. But I feel like I'm kind of spot on there personally. Am I going to say that in this video? No.
From women, right?
Watch my
and we see that
content.
they also have been the most open in regards to like, sexual norms and sexual roles, right? So, and we also see that there's less rates of like STDs reported. We see more
Wait, what did she say?
Open regards to like, happiness and marital satisfaction from like, I think in the past 14 years, they've been ranked as the highest in happiness and marital satisfaction from women, right? And we see that they also have been the most open regards to like, sexual norms and sexual roles, right? So, and we
Are they as promiscuous as American culture, though? I doubt it. There's a lot of factors that play into their happiness: their governmental system, their small population, their homogeneous population as well. Their identical culture all the way around. Like, that's why I always tell people, don't use these Scandinavian countries as a means to kind of find a comparative sample size.
also see that there's less rates of like STDs reported. We see more, and that's also due to comprehensive sex education that's pushed in those countries. So we see that and that's like a direct result of the sexual revolution, right? So when we're seeing that direct reports of happiness, right, we don't have these same rates in America. In these countries that are more sexually open, why would we see like those rates in those type of countries?
So I think you might be referring to this sort of mass-produced study that was a part of like a behavioral science study, which said that women were the happiest women in the world were women that were actually unmarried and had careers. No, okay. Well, there was
reported happiness.
Okay, sure. I'm talking about the same thing. It was reported happiness, but it could be there's tons of studies.
So you're just talking about the happiness index. Candace was referring to a study. She was referring to the happiness index for countries. Yeah, they're two different things.
Point being is that in 2023, there was this massive scandal where they recognized that a lot of these studies that were being produced, behavioral science, was proven to be a complete fraud. And they were unable to reproduce these studies. And they also found that the data had been faked. The data that we can look at that I think shows, and you can let me know if you agree with this, if women, and under the imagination of the feminist umbrella, were really unhappy when they were in the home, and then entering the workforce has made women happier and infinitely feeling more secure about themselves, we could, I think, reasonably expect that there would have been a decrease in suicide rates amongst women.
You would have to go ahead and show how that correlation, right, is going to be a direct cause of women going into the workforce.
Okay, well, how can we, let's measure, then you have to give me a way that we can measure happiness. How can we measure happiness? So I would say suicide rates would be a good thing to look at. Drug, alcohol consumption would be a good thing to look at. Of course, right?
But we would have to, I can say at this point in society, I don't think everyone's happy. I think there's a lot of things that we need to reconcile in society.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right, but we have to look at the cause, right? Why are these things predicted, right? And for example, if we talk about men, there are a lot of things we can look at, right? That tend to predetermine suicide, right? But we can't say, oh, these two things are happening at the same time. This caused this other.
Yeah, I agree to that. I think it's inappropriate to say the sexual revolution caused people to be unhappy. The thing is, when things happen in society or in human history, there are things that are very good that happen that will have unforeseen potential negative consequences. I mean, it just is what it is. Even with something as simple as technology, social media was a positive. People are more informed with news. They're able to interact with more people around the world. They're able to diversify their perspective. As we can see in 2025, there's a lot of unforeseen negative consequences that now our current climate is heavily impacted by. Are we going to say that we should have never had social media? I'll never say that, because it's not a lazy assessment. It's just we have not done a good enough job in adapting to these negative consequences. And now we hit the current situation, and now we have to constantly adapt. And one way you adapt is media literacy, for example. The thing is, for this situation, I think it's very clear that the sexual revolution did a few things. It allowed women to be a little bit more individual. It allowed women to kind of not be forced to be used as an object, but honestly choose to be more sexually promiscuous. But it also gave a lot of women individuality to pursue their own lifestyle that's not purely just a mother in a household. It gave them choice. That's the biggest thing in this conversation. The negative unforeseen consequences of that is that there's going to be more women that want to go down that easier path of sexual promiscuity, because there is a huge cesspool of weirdos that will be more than willing to pay you a lot of money to adhere to that favor or adhere to that want. And another potential negative unforeseen consequence is that a lot of men are not adapting well to being able to handle, deal with, communicate with, being able to understand how to garner a relationship with a woman with her own full career, right? A lot of men don't know how to talk to women. A lot of men do not know how to connect with women, right? A lot of men, especially the ones that grew up before my generation, and even in my generation, were told that women, for the most part, were taking care of the kids. You probably grew up where your mother was the one taking care of the kids, and the dad was doing work. So society never allowed men to adapt to this new way of women individuality. Two negative unforeseen consequences, two things that are not strong enough to say that the sexual revolution should not have happened, but there are two things that we have to adapt, grow, and fix. That's how these things typically work, right? You know what I'm saying? It's already 37 minutes. I reacted to this video enough. Hope you guys enjoyed. For sure, you guys gonna watch the full Jubilee video on your own. Go for it. I was considering watching this conversation between these two because I think she's a very good talker. I think she can converse with Candace very well. But I do think this girl over here did a pretty good job in this conversation, all things considered. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed. Y'all have a good one. As you can tell, I do not hate Candace Owens. Me and Candace probably agree in some aspects. Not fully, but partially. So I can criticize Candace without I still kind of want to keep it. I'm just saying. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.